Welcome on in, guys. Three Bold Takes. I'm Freddie, and I'm joined by Chase and Quinn here. After another exciting weekend of college football, it's time for our Week 8 overreactions. I cannot believe it's already heading into Week 9 of the college football season. Three videos coming at you, two overreactions, and then one fun video. So stay tuned, fellas. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share to your friends. So the first kind of, not necessarily overreaction, but video idea that we had was coaches on the hot seat already heading into the offseason. I know it's only week 8, but over halfway through the college football year, and there are a couple of names, three names in particular, that really scream, I am on the hot seat. And I think a lot of it has to do with expectations coming into the year and also past failure. So we each have one. Chase, if you'd like to go ahead and start us off, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and spill the beans. We all have SEC coaches. Let's go ahead and throw that out there. And so we talked about it before we got on, and we said, looking at other conferences, there's not a lot of guys that are just sitting there and saying, like, this guy has to go at the end of the season. Mel Tucker would have been one of them, but he's already been fired. And then, the Pac-12 is doing really well. The ACC is doing pretty well. So it's really hard to look at any one team besides some that are in the SEC and say, hey, these guys have to go. For me, I'm going to go Shane Beamer. Shane Beamer, for me, I said this earlier, he had high expectations because of his father, I think, from Virginia Tech as well. But then also he had high expectations for South Carolina. And the buzz you kind of got when he got hired was you were going to see a lot of Steve Spurrier type seasons when he finally gets his team going in South Carolina. There were going to be 9-10 win seasons, bowl games. They're going to compete in the East, all that kind of stuff for South Carolina. And right now, Shane Beamer's sitting at 17-16 in his 3 years at South Carolina. And lately, I've watched a lot of his post-game press conferences, and it's a lot of pointing fingers for him, which doesn't sit right for me as a guy that's sitting at 2-5 as a head coach of a university. He's sitting there like, hey, these guys just now the Missouri game, he kind of switched up his tune, but earlier this season, he's kind of like, well, this guy hasn't done this, and these guys haven't done that. And he's kind of blaming the players when he's the coach of these players. And so to be 2-5, and I think every other year he's been around 7-6. I don't think he's had 8 wins yet, if I'm not mistaken, Quinn. I'm not sure if you know that off the top of your head or not. But he's not. Goodness, and he's 1-1 in bowl games. Like, he's been to 2 bowl games, but this year he has they have their last 4 home games at home, right? Or last home, and you have to win all those to even be close to bowl eligible. And so Shane Beamer just has not been the coach that South Carolina needs, or South Carolina was expecting, I would guess. Because like at Vandy, you kind of hire a coach, and Vandy's like, okay, well, this guy, if he gets 4 wins, we're going to assign him to a lifetime contract. But South Carolina, you have expectations. Definitely after Spurrier left, hey, you can recruit well here, and you can also compete well here. And Shane Beamer just hasn't been that. And I think if they don't make a bowl this season, you might want to see if there is anybody out there just in case. And I'm not saying he needs to be fired right away, but if there is somebody that is an upgrade that's willing to come to South Carolina, you know what? Say Deion Sanders says, you know what? 1 year at Colorado, I'd hire Deion Sanders, right, at South Carolina. But I would look at other options than Beamer after the end of the season if there's not a bowl game.
I'll say this: hiring Dion in South Carolina would be scary because you've got all that talent right there in Florida and Georgia and the Carolinas. But as far as Beamer, I kind of agree. The way I see the SEC, thanks to Stoops at Kentucky, he's rewritten the expectation for Kentucky football to me. So excluding Vanderbilt in the SEC, there's always one of two fan bases. You're either the I want 8 wins and a bowl game appearance, or 7 wins and a bowl game win, right? Like, you want 8 wins in a season and to play in a bowl game, or you're one of the higher echelon SEC teams where it's all about winning the SEC and winning the national title. I don't think South Carolina's that. As far as firing Beamer, I personally think that might be the right way to go. It is important. They've had a bad year this year. Last year showed a whole lot of promise, though. I'm scared that maybe this is like an overreaction to high expectations after the way last season ended. But frankly, if he doesn't make a bowl game, you got to get him out of there, like 100%. I think South Carolina, and we'll touch on a different team later, and I'll have a slightly different take. But with South Carolina, you play lower competition throughout the season. You get Texas A&M as your cross rival from the West. You could get a harder draw than them. Currently, over the last couple seasons, LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama would be the three hardest draws from the West. You're not getting any of them. And then you play in the East, which is already an easier draw than playing in the West. Now, all that's about to be null and void starting next year, but it hasn't been up to this point in his tenure. So I think it's fair to say he's disappointed, and I'm almost there, but I wouldn't say get rid of him yet. I want to see how the season ends. Obviously, if he doesn't make a bowl game this year, I think you got to get rid of him. And it definitely looks like that's going to be the direction it goes, but we're not there yet. If he does miss, though, I'd say get him out of town.
Right. And
Yeah.
let me right before you go in, Freddie. He did win 8 games last year, but that was because of the bowl game. He ended up winning that bowl game.
I thought they lost their bowl game.
Yeah, they lost their bowl game. I was looking at the year before. 7-6, 8-5, and now he's 2-5. So he's already amassed the same amount of losses as he did last year. Freddie.
Yeah, and looking at Twitter, right? I like to look at a lot of different fan bases' Twitter, right, to understand kind of what the fans are thinking. And it seems to be.
I think you mean X.
X. Sorry, X. You're right. X.
Wow.
Excuse me. Elon Musk, please don't shadow ban me from X. But with that being said, though, a lot of fans are very upset, not only with the performance of the team. Obviously, they're 2-5. I think they're more upset with the antics around him as a coach, right? The coming out and saying, yeah, I kicked something too hard because I was mad after a game or whatever, even though he said he wasn't mad, he just kicked something. Like, it's stuff like that, and then always like blaming stuff on other people. Like, there was one game, I think it was like week 2 or 3, he blamed the referees because they were eating corn dogs during halftime or hot dogs during halftime because they didn't get an onside kick, but they actually did get the onside kick. So it's like he's just trying to come up with different reasons why his team is being the way he is, just like you said, Chase. And 2-5 is just pitiful. I mean, considering you beat Clemson last year and you beat Tennessee last year, to go to this, like, and their recruiting numbers aren't the best either. Like, that was one thing that they were hoping, was because of that 2010 team that he was a part of, they thought maybe he would be able to come in here and recruit a little bit better, and it just hasn't shown up yet. The run game's horrible. The defense is god-awful. Spencer Rattler's the only promising thing on the team, and even that is, he's been good. He's been better this year than last year, but the team is a lot worse. So, I don't really know. I'm not 100% for firing after this year, but I'm not 100% against it either. If you believe he should be fired as the university and you fire him, cool. I have no problem with it. If you want to give him one more year in a divisionless SEC, and if he does not make a bowl game again, fire him. I'm okay with that too. So it's a very interesting take. So for mine, I'll just go ahead and say mine because we'll just save Quinn for last year. I'm going with Sam Pittman at Arkansas, which is sad to say and think about because I love me some Sam Pittman. Always have. He's one of college football's most likable coaches, just because he has that aura around him of always being happy, and like he lifts the people up around him, his coaching staff. Everything about him is great. Except for the piss poor performance on the field this year. Arkansas was 2-10 before he got there, and then his first year there, they went 3-7 during the COVID year, then 9-4, which was a peak, and then they went 7-6 last year, and they're 2-6 this year, losing 6 straight. Only wins coming against lower classification schools: Clint State, Kent State and Western Carolina. And they're gearing up for a season of maybe 3 wins. They've got Florida left on the schedule at Florida, so that makes it extremely difficult. They have Auburn at home, FIU at home, and Missouri at home. I'm seeing maybe 1, possibly 2 more wins. So, that's 4 wins at best. And at that point, I don't care how nice a guy is, it's time to cut him loose. He peaked at 9-4, and I honestly thought that he was the savior of Arkansas. And maybe he was. I mean, 2-10, and 2 years later, you're 9-4, almost to that 10-win mark, and it kind of put Arkansas back on the map and not being some stumbling block and just, the team that you make fun of. Like, you have 2 wins, you're almost like Vandy at that point. But now they're hard-nosed. They fight like dogs. I mean, this year alone, there's been 5 one-score games that they've all lost. 3 of those go the other way. This is a completely different conversation. You're looking at, 5 wins already? So 5-3. But it's just a sad situation. I think it's time for Sam Pittman to be let go from Arkansas.
Yeah, see, for me, this is where I was alluding to. I'm a little different on Sam Pittman than I am Shane Beamer. I personally don't think it's time to cut it. I know that sounds crazy. He's having a 2-6 season, and that's rough. And it's really hard to defend the loss to BYU and the loss to Mississippi State. Now, the other losses, Ole Miss, LSU, Alabama, all by a touchdown or less. Those are really good football teams, and they were in those games. They got kind of kicked to the curb by Texas A&M, which I found a little weird. I find it weird in the current stage of college football. I think Arkansas needs to accept what they are. I think Arkansas wants to be the program that expectations should be SEC title and national title, but their reality is they're one of the programs that expectations should be 7 or 8 wins and a bowl game win. Sam Pittman brought you back to that. This is a down year. I'm not trying to defend this year at all, but you look at the games; they're all like super close games that could have very easily been wins, and they're not. And at the end of the day, you got to win the games. That's all that matters. But I think it's important to remember the highs that he's brought you as well, and what you were before he got there. What Arkansas was before he got there was an absolute joke. Like, they were in the same conversations as Vandy. In fact, there were years where they were worse than Vandy. They are not that anymore. Like, when Arkansas comes down, you actually think about ways they can attack you and ways they can hurt you. That was not a thing we were thinking about from like 2013, 2014. Even in the Bielema era, people were not scared of Arkansas. I have seen more people legitimately worried about playing Arkansas under Pittman than I did under Bielema. So it's been a hot minute since Arkansas was what they used to be in like the early 2000s through like 2012. I just think it's really knee jerk. This team could very easily. I know you said there's probably only FIU. I think is a win easily. So that's the third. This team can beat Auburn. They should have beat Mississippi State and BYU again. They didn't, but they should have. That makes them a 4-4 team. They win those 2 games. I think Auburn's a winnable game. I think Florida's a winnable game. I think Missouri probably beats them. But this team, and I know you reacted like, oh, weird. This is the same team that hung in a game with Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss. Like, we've seen them hang in games with really good football teams. They just don't win them. So if you were to come up and tell me that they're going to beat a team that's 4-2 and has looked shaky at times, I wouldn't necessarily doubt that is possible. Now, if Arkansas wants to part ways with him, go right ahead, be my guest. But I'm just worried Sam Pittman gets Arkansas, and I'm worried you bring someone in who doesn't, and you're right back in the same bad lull of years they were in for almost a decade.
I mean, if they hadn't lost 6 in a row, I may be there with you on they could beat Florida. They're not beating Florida at Florida after losing 6 in a row.
And I think the two biggest things for Pittman for me is I'm actually not in favor of firing him. I can see he's on the hot seat. But the two biggest things for Pittman that hasn't really sat with me, Pittman was the O-line coach at Georgia, right? And, talking to our boy Arkansas Austin that was on the show just a couple weeks ago, he's mentioned how piss poor the offensive line is for Arkansas. That's your bread and butter, Pittman. Why is it not one of the most elite groups in all of the SEC and the country, honestly? So that's a problem. That also affects just the rest of your offense as a whole. And the second thing they handled the other day, it's the offense. You finally fired the offensive coordinator who put up 3 points against Mississippi State, if I have that correct. 3 points against Mississippi State, and you lose the game?
Lowest scoring SEC game since Mississippi State and Auburn finished 3-2.
And what, that was what, in the 90s?
No, that was 11 years ago.
11. Oh, I thought that was my bad. But Mississippi State, your Arkansas defense allowed 7 points. How do you not win that game? And so you finally fire him, and that's why I'm going to hold off on Pittman just for right now. Is who do you hire in that position that allows you to get back to that 8, 9, 10 win season? However, you are going to lose KJ Jefferson after this season, so you got to fit a new quarterback into that system. You got to find a new system in the first place, and everything else has to get better. I think they can do it. I think Pittman can be that guy. But you have to be really patient. I feel like in that 9-4 season actually screwed Pittman and Arkansas because now their expectations is 8, 9, 10 win seasons. So, but I'm going to hold off on Pittman and let him get one more OC and give him one more year and see how that comes about. Because after next year, if you're not an 8-4, 9-3 team consistently, I don't think you'll ever be.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good point. And their schedule next year doesn't look particularly that difficult. So there is a slight chance that could happen. Quinn, let's round it out with you and your coach.
Yeah, my coach, I want to lead with he should be on the hot seat and he should be fired, but he won't be. And that's Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. The reason he won't be is they can't afford to get rid of him. But the reason he should be gone, in my opinion, you're Texas A&M, you're pouring a lot of money. You have the resources, you have the facilities you need to be an elite program. Now, where I was talking about Arkansas wants to be that, and they're not quite that, Texas A&M wants to be that, and in every way, shape, and form can and should be that. You have multiple top-end recruiting classes over the last few years. You have a high-profile coach. You have a lot of money in your program. You have a nice, beautiful facility, nice, beautiful stadium. You have everything you need to be that elite program, and you're not. You lose the big games every time, other than when Alabama came to town in 2021. And even then, you got that win, and you still choked out a bunch of other games in the rest of your season that made that win not matter. And that is the story of Texas A&M under Jimbo. This team, aside from the COVID year where they only lost the one game to Alabama, went on and played in the Orange Bowl and beat the perennial underachievers that is North Carolina. That is the best season that Texas A&M has had under Jimbo, and it's time to move on. Now, again, they cannot afford to get rid of him, but he should be, in my opinion, the number one coach, especially in the SEC, that should be gone because he has underachieved so badly.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go in on this. You say they can't afford it. I think you allow one recruiting class to go downhill just a little bit, and you put all that money you're giving to those kids and put it into that. Because Jimbo, I've been saying this for 3-4 years, he just is not going to get over a hump. He's had the opportunity to do so. You talk about the Alabama game where they lose that one, or they win that one and then they choke away other. But he's had a chance to get over that hump and win and do Texas A&M justice. But he's no better than Kevin Sumlin. He's not. Kevin Sumlin was just a little more ostracized because he had a lot of success based on a couple of players, like Johnny Manziel, had a chance with Kyler Murray, stuff like that. And now Jimbo, he's done decent But you fired a guy because Kevin Sumlin wasn't going to get you to your national championship aspirations. Neither is Jimbo. And no offense, you cannot hang your hat on a guy. Oh, well, he won a national championship. He's one of 5 current head coaches that have won a national championship. Who cares?
He wanted
Like that.
decade.
Yeah, it was a decade and a half ago almost. Or no, only a decade ago. Dang, my bad. But Jimbo has not been sufficiently good enough for this team to compete in the SEC. If you put him in the Big Ten, you put him in the ACC, maybe it's a different breed. But he was tailing off when he left Florida State, and he's only been mediocre at Texas A&M. You've got to let it go and just sever that tie, in my opinion. I think you should fire him, and I think you should fire him right now. I think you should have fired him 2 years ago. I think you should have never even hired the guy in the first place, because Jimbo Fisher is a mediocre coach that had a lot of talent on one good team and played in a weak ACC that allowed him to get a national championship. Bam. Case closed.
I disagree that they never should have hired him. I thought it was kind of a good hire for Texas A&M and the talent pool of coaches that was available at the time. That was the highest caliber coach that they could have gotten at the time. However, Kevin Sumlin did better with less. Kevin Sumlin was not recruiting in the top 5, the top 7 every single year. Jimbo Fisher is, and he's underperforming even Kevin Sumlin. And I think the Texas A&M boosters are kicking themselves in the foot right now, because think about with NIL and what all is in Texas. Like, there's a lot of oil money. Texas A&M has a lot of money, period. Imagine what Kevin Sumlin could have done if he had all the money available now with NIL, and considering Kevin Sumlin wasn't paid near what Jimbo is, so that would have added even more to the pot. I genuinely think that Texas A&M would be in a much better position now with Kevin Sumlin than they are in with Jimbo Fisher. But what's funny is they fired Kevin Sumlin because of this performance that we're getting from Jimbo. 8-4, 7-5. Gone. Fired. Done. I don't even know if he's coaching anymore. Is he? I don't. I mean,
last I remember, he was at Arizona.
Yeah, like dead, buried, and gone for this performance that Jimbo Fisher is giving us. But Jimbo is knocking it up to all other external factors. He went and hired an offensive coordinator. Still not working, not getting it done. Period. And it's just sad to see, because Texas A&M for the longest time under Kevin Sumlin was always a 7-5, 8-4 team. They could never break it. Then Jimbo goes 9-1 during COVID, which is very impressive. They were 5th in the country, missed out on the playoff by one spot. And then look at them. I don't know.
Let me say this. I mean, you look at their roster. Let's exclusively look at the stars on their roster. They're either the 3rd or 4th most talented team in the conference, depending on how you feel about LSU. They're clearly behind Alabama and Georgia, but they're right there. And I think the most disappointing part is you look at the reality of what's about to happen for Texas A&M. Texas is hot right now. Texas is one of the hottest brands in the sport at this exact moment, and they're about to come to the conference. You left the Big 12 because you couldn't get out of their shadow. And we talked about this, I know when I first came on, how important this season was for them. You have to establish yourself, and I've been saying this for the last 2 or 3 years, as a perennial power inside of the conference Texas is coming into, so that Texas doesn't immediately put you right back into the situation you were in that you tried to get out of. And they continued to underachieve. And I mean, do you not think, I do, that when Oklahoma and Texas, the other 2 major brands that kids growing up in Texas watch, Oklahoma and Texas are going to come in and Texas A&M's right back to third fiddle, because they have not grabbed any kind of momentum in the conference.
Thanks for watching. This has been 3 Bold Takes. I'm Freddie. I'm joined by Chase and Quinn. Hope you enjoyed and stick around. Share to your friends if you haven't already. And click the 2 videos that's on the screen. Obviously, YouTube thinks you'll like them, and so do we. So hopefully we'll see you next week. Peace.